When people told Robert he looked like Abraham Lincoln, he just laughed. But that was before he grew the beard. After he grew it, he looked in the mirror and said, "This is my destiny. Shame on me if I don't present Abraham Lincoln." Well, that epiphany changed his life. Now the former drywall contractor presents Lincoln 40 times a year. But Robert knows it's not enough to look like Lincoln to present him. There's a responsibility that comes with that hat, he said, and you feel it when you put it on. There's a standard you must uphold. Cookie was a housebound asthmatic taking medication for bipolar disorder. But all that changed when she became a mermaid. "I feel invincible," she told me. "I can do anything." And that includes marrying her mertender, Ralph. He told me when Cookie became a mermaid, she got off her meds. She puts on her tail, he said, and she becomes a completely different person. William and Karen. They've been married more than 40 years. They owe their longevity in part to their fetish lifestyle. They know it's not for everyone, but once a year, they get together with other fetishists at a hotel in Florida. "Where else are you going to go when you look like me?" William said. This is a venue where people with proclivities outside the mainstream can network and have some fun without feeling ostracized. Everybody's kink is okay. If you had told me 4 years ago that I would ever meet William and Karen, Cookie or Robert, let alone talk about them at a TEDx conference, I would have thought you were mad. That's because my career as a photographer began in ruin. This kind of ruin. Dead buildings, without a living soul in sight. Shot in black and white infrared, a type of photography that accentuates their haunted otherworldliness. As a photographer and as a history buff, this was my way to commune with the past. But after doing this type of photography for a few years and publishing it in a couple of books, I realized that if I was to grow as a photographer, I needed to be in the present and photograph people in living color. So in 2013, I began researching what I thought was going to be my next project, reenactors. Years ago, I worked for the History Channel, producing documentaries, and I had worked with reenactors and found them to be a fascinating subculture, especially around this idea of transformation. Basically, how they transform themselves from regular people into historical figures. So while researching reenactors, I came across the website for these guys. The Association of Lincoln Presenters. So Robert's brethren. And they present Lincoln at reenactments, schools, and parades. And on their website, they happen to be promoting their upcoming convention. And when I saw that, a bell went off in my head. Conventions, like-minded people getting together, celebrating their quirky interest. That's it. And thus began a 3-year deep dive into the world of conventions. Each one more quirky and photogenic than the next, all for a book I would call Conventional Wisdom. And transformation emerged as a major theme of the book. And I observed 3 types of transformation. The first one is transformation motivated by emulation. And the Lincoln presenters are motivated in this way. When they dress up as Lincoln, they are Lincoln. They expect you to address them as Mr. President. And if you were to ask them a question, they would respond as Lincoln would have responded. And if they sent you an email, they would sign it A. Lincoln, the way Lincoln signed his correspondence. So that's transformation motivated by emulation. The second type of transformation is motivated by life purpose. And Aurora, who I met at the World Clown Association convention, transformed in this way. While working as a bank vice president, she began clowning as part of a mentoring program in inner city schools. And a woman came up to her and said, "Honey, you make that costume come to life." That was Aurora's aha moment. About a year later, she quit her 34-year career to clown full-time. "I realized my purpose was no longer in banking," she said. "I had to do what my heart was calling me to do. It's important to have joy and to share it. It's that old corporate win-win." The third type of transformation is motivated by self-exploration. This is all about playing with who you are. These transformers literally try on another persona to feel more comfortable in their own skin. And the mermaids, like Cookie, who I met at Merfest, exemplify this type of transformation. When they put on their mermaid tails, it's not just for show. It's also to express what they call their mersona, a mermaid alter ego who models the traits that they would like to express in their own lives. And Stephanie told me all about her relationship with her mersona, Raina, the Halifax mermaid. Stephanie described herself as having been awkward, a bit foggy-headed, and inarticulate. Raina, on the other hand, is agile and confident and eloquent. And the beautiful thing is that Stephanie has been a professional mermaid model for so long now that she and Raina have become one. And I can attest to this. Of all the conventioneers I met, Stephanie, or maybe it was Raina, was easily one of the most agile, confident, and eloquent. Now, just as the mermaids have their mersonas, the furries, who I met at Anthrocon, the largest furry convention, have their fursonas. And these are animal characters that they create who model the traits that they would like to manifest in their lives. And Dimitri told me all about his relationship with his persona, Laser, the hyena. Dimitri describes himself as being shy and socially awkward, while Laser is an extrovert. He loves to joke around and play. But on a deeper level, Dimitri, born female, is transitioning to male, and Laser is a male hyena. So when Dimitri puts on that Laser fursuit and becomes that Laser fursona, he presents as male. And just as important, he's accepted as male. So when he takes that Laser fursuit and fursona off, he feels more comfortable being who he is. Now, all these transformations I've described don't exist in a vacuum. They need community, not just to exist, but to thrive. Community creates a space of trust where people can transform without judgment and with the acceptance and support that many of them don't get in their own lives. I met many conventioneers who are socially isolated because they've been rejected by friends and family over this peculiar interest they have. So they go online, where they discover a vast virtual community of people just like them. And for the first time in their lives, they don't feel alone. But connecting virtually goes only so far. We humans are social animals. We like to be together. So they hold a convention. And the convention becomes the actual space of trust, where they can transform without judgment and with total acceptance. For this reason, the convention is the highlight of the year for many conventioneers. In fact, it was the highlight of the year for me. But in attending these conventions, I had to walk a fine line. As a photographer, I had to remain a detached, clear-eyed observer, much like a cultural anthropologist. But hey, I'm human. I felt the buzz in the ballrooms and the convention centers, and there was many times I wanted to put my camera down and join in the fun. I didn't, but I did return to these conventions multiple times over the 3 years, not just needing to do additional photography, but wanting to feel that buzz again. And I admit, it felt great to renew acquaintances with people that I had met the year before, and they accepted me and made me feel like I belonged in their community. In fact, the Lincoln presenters invited me to join their association. It's true. They appreciated my respect for the man. They looked me up and down and said, "Arthur, you'd make a great young Lincoln." Well, I was flattered by their invitation, but I respectfully declined because I had to remain that detached, clear-eyed observer. But of all the transformations I observed, there was one in particular that really took me by surprise. And that was how the conventioneers transformed me as a photographer and as a human being. In short, I became a lot more empathetic than I was before I undertook conventional wisdom. And by that I mean, I came to realize that I was just like them. And this realization really hit me at BronyCon. Are people familiar with BronyCon? Okay. For those who aren't, it's a convention held by and for fans of My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic. An animated series initially intended for young girls, but whose most avid fan base now is made up of young adult males. Bro, Pony, Brony, BronyCon. And it takes place every August at the Baltimore Convention Center. And of all the conventions I attended, from the Furries to the Fetishists, BronyCon was the one that took me the longest to wrap my head around. Mainly because I saw a lot of this. Young adult males besotted with these pastel pony characters from My Little Pony. I really wanted to understand them. After all, that's why I was there. Luckily, I met Dr. Pat Edwards, a psychologist. He was at BronyCon to present the Brony Study, a long-term survey of the fandom that he and colleagues conducted. And Dr. Edwards told me that bronies love My Little Pony, especially for its positive messages about friendship, tolerance, and so forth. And then he said, look, we all need meaning and purpose. This is something we raise with respect to fandoms in general. And I find it interesting, he went on, that there are people out there who say bronies need to grow up and get a life. Yet these same people organize their lives around when the Orioles are playing in town. When Dr. Edwards said that, I told him all about my being a crazy, and I do mean crazy, Boston Red Sox fan. Do we have Red Sox fans here? We're everywhere. We should have a convention. So anyway, I told Dr. Edwards how I flew cross-country twice just to attend championship parades in Boston, and that I had suggested to my wife, to no avail I might add, that we get married at Fenway Park where the Red Sox play. I married her anyway. So in the end, I'm really no different than a brony, am I? And Dr. Edwards smiled and he said, you know, we really need to stop looking at fandoms through what we psychologists call a deviance model. You know, these bronies, they carry these plushy ponies around. That's deviant. And instead, move towards what we call a function model. And for that, we take a line from Dr. Phil. How's that working for you? And with the bronies, if they're finding safety and if the message is positive and upbeat, then we need more groups like this. Which brings me to how the conventioneers, not just the bronies, but all of them, transformed me as a photographer. Because of them, I'm no longer interested in photographing the history of the past, someone else can photograph the ruins. I'm focused now on photographing the history of the future, meaning photographing the history of tomorrow today. And I'd like to think that 20, 30 years from now, people will look at the photographs I've shared with you and see how in this part of the 21st century, a time when traditional institutions like government, religion, and media have lost their power to really bring us together. And in their absence, we have formed and found community based on the things that matter to us. So, if you have an interest, a passion, maybe an obsession that deep down you think is just too weird to go public, if you take away anything from my talk, it's this: you are not alone. Your community is out there, and they're waiting for you with open arms. Convene. And just like the furries, the bronies, and all the conventioneers, you'll find that friendship is magic, and you'll make history. Thank you.